Hello and welcome. It is I, Iron Raven, back yet again with another review. Apologies for this kind of setup going on. It's more audio review format. I'm out and about, and so I had a chance to go ahead and get this review out there. And so, yeah. Now, this is, of course, the series finale of Better Call Saul, and essentially, as well, the end of the Breaking Bad universe, if you will. I mean, because of course we had Breaking Bad, and then we had the one movie that they did, El Camino, showing the aftermath of what happened with Jesse. And of course, this series has been pretty much all prequel with some, some little nuggets throughout the series, scenes throughout. And of course, as we've gotten closer to the end here, we've gotten a lot more of that, more of these black and white sequences, this epilogue, if you will, to the whole arc of all this story. And so, as we know from the beginning of this series, for those of you that did watch, if you happen to be watching, um, yeah, we start off with Jimmy McGill and his brother Chuck McGill, both very, very strong lawyers. At least his brother has been seen as that. Someone who's been in business with HHM, Hamlin McGill. So he's very much the respected lawyer of the community, while Jimmy has always been, slipping Jimmy. He's been the underdog, if you will, the guy who's always played by his own rules and never quite followed the rules. He it just never really worked for him, and so therefore he's always cast a shadow, a cloud over him, if you will, as far as how he's perceived. Even though he's shown to be a great mind, obviously, and of course as the series goes along, we see just how competent he actually is. And so, we get to this point where as the series has progressed, we see how he's transformed into the Saul Goodman persona. And now, with these more recent episodes, we've saw more of the Gene side of things, post Breaking Bad, where he's been on the run, where he's had the name change, and he's working at the Cinnabon, and you see just all these extra layers to his character. It just goes to show that he's never he really has had all these sides to him. Like this it's been a constant evolution where Jimmy, even though he's been very much misguided, as well as the Saul Goodman side of him, Jimmy has shown that he's always had a good heart about him. He's just had, it's been like an addiction. He just has to do things his own way. He's not necessarily a man of the system, for better or worse. And as you've seen more of him progress into the Saul Goodman persona, where he's got the more extravagant suits, he's just more of that stronger personality. And of course, as he's getting these bigger and bigger schemes going along, eventually, of course, that starts affecting more of the people around him, his relationships. And in the more recent episodes, we saw where Kim Wexler finally just kind of walked away because she herself has very much shown that she has enjoyed like that wild side, like that she herself has some of that within her. And we've even gotten a couple of flashbacks to show, back to her mother, that she, had a little bit of hint of that going on before, whether or not she kind of wanted to be that or not. And so getting to this point now where it's pretty much just all epilogue, it's all black and white. We see the Gene side of things, where in a lot of these recent episodes we had this one character played by Carol Burnett, this one woman who you get to a point now where, she felt betrayed by him. She figures out who he was, and so she calls the cops on him. He's on the run, and so this is just the final just moment of confrontation with Jimmy's, with Saul's, with Gene's own demons. And as you go through this episode, this final arc for Jimmy, that you really then they really start, especially what he literally says it himself in this episode, to where it shows that much more of a great mind that he truly was, because they basically said that if not for him, then Walter White would not have been to the level that he was at before he eventually fell off. It's all Jimmy. I mean, he's kind of like the Joker in that sense, where on the exterior you see this certain elaborate, very out there persona, and you may think he's just simply a madman, or just, he's just crazy, or just weird, or, just a hustler of sorts. But really, I mean, he's a way smarter guy than what he gets credit for. He definitely is steps ahead. He's very, very clever. And so when you get to the Gene side of things, it's very much the most extreme version of Jimmy, of Saul, where it seems like even for a moment, like once she tells on him, then it seems like almost for like a brief moment, you think that he's going to harm her, but he doesn't. And so at once he gets caught and once he's locked away in the cell, he sees this like a little bit of writing on the wall where it says so the effects of my lawyer's going to ream your ass, and he has this just moment, after he kind of punched the door, he hurts his hand, and he just seems like he's about to go mad. And you think like, okay, what's about to happen with him? Is he gonna go off the deep end? Is he gonna go almost like full fledged like Gene? Is he gonna be like the madman of sorts? Is he gonna like not be able to walk away from this in a way, or could he solid up a bit? Could he find a way to sneak his way out of it and get a better sentence, even if that means just having to likes to just go to his old ways and just to have that persona win over in the end? Or could he go back to more of the kind-hearted Jimmy and sort of redeem himself, like atone for his sins and face his demons, especially in the system that he spent his whole life dealing with, him and his brother, the law? And by the end of it all, when it's all said and done, like when we get even Marie back, who of course was Hank's wife, and of course given all the ripple effects of what's been done by Walt by him, that ultimately caused the death of him. And it seemed like Kim might even be able to go down along with this if he decides to go a certain way about it, because in the previous episode she had gone to Howard's wife and basically confessed everything, written, it was all typed out, like this is exactly what happened and blah blah blah. And so you get to the point where he's dealing with, like, he's trying to reach a deal and stuff, so he pulls out the Saul card one last time, like he plays that Saul to the T, and he gets his sentencing down to about 7 years, which is insane compared to where he would have been, which would have been basically multiple lifetimes of prison time. And so he does that one more time, and so that would have been ultimately a victory for him. It really would have been. But by the time it's all said and done, he ultimately uses those other personas to bring himself back to Jimmy McGill, more of the guy that has a heart to him. And he helps basically exonerate Kim from all of this, and yet he's also ultimately facing, like I said, the very thing that he's been dealing with his whole life, the law. And he finally becomes the bigger man, and in front of Kim, no less. So and you see these looks they give each other, especially once you get towards the closing moments. I mean, she finally sees him, like I said, just being the bigger man, and finally in her eyes, he is the man he was always, in a sense, meant to be. He was meant to, finally recognize his wrongs and to ultimately, free himself in the end. Because even though he winds up going to prison for like 86 years, it's a very bittersweet ending, because when you look at that, like when he's on the bus, when he's being transported to the prisoners recognize him, and then they start like chanting like "Better call Saul" and all this stuff, and you recognize that he has left quite an impact on certain people, like the people he would actually help defend. And even though he's going to prison, he's very much free. Even though he's in a literal imprisonment, his mind, like his mental state, is very much free. So it's kind of like a nice in between when you recognize what happened with Walter when he died by the end of Breaking Bad, and of course in El Camino, where Jesse kind of got a second chance at life, where he was set free, because as Walter became worse, Jesse became better as the series went along. And like I said, he ultimately got his freedom. And this is kind of like an in between of that, where yeah, he's facing what for the crimes he's done, but he's fully redeemed himself. Where some would argue whether or not Walter redeemed himself. I mean, he certainly left on as much of a positive note as he could have. He helped free Jesse. He helped exonerate Skyler. He still technically won. He was still very much a villain, but he still, for the most part, written some of the wrongs by the end of it. But was definitely the more redeeming moment because Jesse himself didn't really need redemption. He was more like the one that needed to be free, and he ultimately got that. Here, Saul, he pretty much freed himself of those personas, and he just went back to the more good-hearted McGill, and he again faced his demons, faced his crimes, and he's like, you know what? I can kind of live with this, and it's like I said, it's very bittersweet being in a literal imprisonment, but mentally he's very much free. And so it was as perfect of an ending as it could be for this show. And I was very much satisfied with it. And I can understand some people complaining maybe that the last few episodes were probably a bit too slow going into these last couple of episodes, in which I can understand that. Yeah, maybe they could have split them up a bit or something. But ultimately, again, the whole arc of this entire franchise has been something to really behold. How every single character moment, how every like little tiniest of little details could really come back and show you how important they really were, and just how natural these characters evolved over time. How much they've risen, how much they've fallen, how much they may have redeemed themselves. Everything meant something in the end. And like I said, I felt like this is as perfect of an ending for this character. And you do ultimately feel satisfied, like you feel happy for him because he's kind of, again, just kind of taken himself, he's accepted it. And working in kind of like in the prison bakery, he's like baking bread and stuff. And as you see, what he's done in Cinnabon. So, ultimately, and again, the prisoners kind of respect him. And Kim came back, because she said uh, her means of basically going to see him, her barcode doesn't expire, and so therefore, she's able to just kind of get away in there, and you end on this a very nice shot of them smoking a cigarette up against the wall like they did towards the start of the series, and it ends with some very nice shots, him like pointing the guns at her, like the fingers outside the fences. You have this wide shot of them on opposite ends of the fence, and the final shot is just her walking away. You see from her POV, just looking at Saul, and then you just cut behind a wall, and then just those final moments. It was just beautifully done. It didn't need to be, of course, some big extravagant thing like Breaking Bad. Didn't need this like action or anything like that. But ultimately, again, where we left off with this character, it feels very much justified. It feels very much earned and very bittersweet. And I do think they perfected everything they needed to do. And so, all in all, I felt like it really was very satisfying, despite maybe, nitpicks and stuff, and maybe how previous episodes were handled or whatever. But again, all in all, I mean, the creators of this show do some really amazing work. And by the end of it, when it's all been said and done, it was truly something to behold and really shows you how to do storytelling, which is something that's greatly lacking. And I'm glad I got to watch this and just experience the journey of him and these characters. It's really been something wonderfully done. So I'll just go ahead and wrap it up right there. So if you saw it for yourself, if you're a fan, I mean, of course, you're welcome to leave comments and just say what you think about it. But all in all, again, I think for me, it was as fitting of an ending for this particular character. And it was kind of like a reverse Shawshank Redemption, where in that movie where it's about getting out of the prison, there was basically redemption for like the Red character, and for Andy to get out of prison. But it's kind of like a reverse where he's going in prison, but mentally, again, he's free of his own doings, and he's back to being good old Jimmy McGill, which is kind of fascinating to me. But like I said, okay, I'll just cut off right there. But thank you very much for watching. If you did, I am Iron Raven, and I am out.